Yeah, I'm aware nothing's playing because I haven't switched over yet. So I'll go ahead and do that. Can everyone hear me? All right. This is the first time that I'm streaming using this stuff, so I need to make sure that everything's kind of working. It looks like it's working. Hoorah. Hoorah. Yeah, everything good? Hey, perfect. Everything's all right. All right. Okay, so sorry I haven't been around a while. I've been doing stuff. But I do want to report on exciting news here. Apparently in Canada, one of their little city states or countries or states, whatever they want to call them up there, decided out of the blue to say that, hey, all of that, we're just going to go back to normal. You guys can have your lockdown stuff and you can do all that. We're just going to call it the flu, and we're not gonna do anything anymore. And the excuse that they give from the guy who runs it is that apparently they had their gene manipulation therapy rate was at such a rate that they said everything's fine now because everyone had their gene therapy, so we're good. We're gonna stop all the stuff. And really, what the truth of it is, you come to find out, is that there's a guy. Remember a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, when all this stuff was just kind of starting, I said, all of these tickets and all these things that they're issuing for, not wearing your muzzle and stuff, they're all illegal. They're all color of law, and they all either get thrown out of court or you fight them, they get thrown out. And apparently people haven't been doing that, right? But this guy did. And he brought he subpoenaed the chief medical person for the state of Alberta or whatever that they were basing their authority to issue the tickets on, and said, prove it. He said, prove it. I will follow all of your stuff if you prove that this exists. And they couldn't do it, and it's in court, documented for the record, that they can't prove it exists. Obviously, I can't read the stuff because I'll get kicked off of YouTube. That's how true it is. Right? They can't prove it. And it's like, did it take a year and a half, guys? Did it take a year and a half for someone to say, I'm not paying your ticket and prove to me it exists? Apparently. But immediately, Alberta realized that if they cannot prove it exists, they are responsible for damages to all those people that they locked down. They are responsible for damages to all the people who got hurt by gene therapy. They are responsible for all that stuff. And they said, whoa, we're going to call it the flu. We're going to go back to normal. We're going to call it the flu. Uh-oh. So, surprise, surprise, it actually comes out of Canada, of all places. What are the people in the U.S. doing? I don't know. But it's a happy day. It's a happy day. We're just ready to pack our bags to head to Mexico. But apparently, if people, this is a precedent, and this is in, this is commerce. And commerce knows no borders. All right? So you have a court case that happens in Canada that's basically a commerce case of liability. It's going to kind of go everywhere. Now you're going to have people getting these wise ideas that look at this guy's case and going, so can anybody prove this stuff exists? Can anybody prove it? Anybody prove it? All it takes is a little bit of fight. A little bit of fight. Now, of course, the fact checkers go up here and they'll say that, well, this guy, Patrick King, he lost his case. It doesn't matter. Of course they threw his case out. It doesn't matter. He has documented evidence in court of the public record that says they have no evidence for anything. It doesn't matter if they threw his court case out. It doesn't matter if anything else. Anything else. And for people who want to, can do your own research, the guy's name is Patrick King. I'm sure if you Googled that or whatever you come up with the thing in the interviews that he's done with several different people. I learned about it an hour ago from the Dollar Vigilante. People who want to stay up to date on what's going on, primarily with the whole gene therapy thing. He does a lot of stuff on that, but that's where I found out about it. And it's like, I heard about the Alberta thing and I was kind of wondering why. And sure enough, exactly as I said, you have to accept liability when you tell people to do something. Okay? And if there is no basis for your color of law, your phony laws, your mandates, and all of this stuff, if there's no basis for it and it's all a made up fairy tale, you're liable for any damages. This is yelling fire in the crowded theater. Okay? This is exactly the same thing. And they figured it out. And you know, we'll see if this guy is the leader of that. We'll see how long he continues to persist in this world. Because people that have been saying that, you know, it's a whole bunch of hoax and garbage and all this stuff, they have a mysterious knack of falling over from heart attacks. It's the funniest thing. You know, it must be because they're not following the regulations to keep them safe. So that is what I have on the story, and I want to kind of poke around here to see how to navigate this. I'm using OBS Studio instead of StreamYard, and StreamYard's a lot easier, but I need to use this just for the running different channels and green screen and the whole business. So what we got going on in chat? What do anyone think of that? Y'all approve? Do y'all approve of what's going on? I said to my wife, I said, well, if this is all it took, I should have went, you know, a year ago, I should have went to a government building and made them give me a ticket so I could go to court. I mean, I'll do it. It doesn't cost anything. It's just kind of a pain, you know? And then Brett, it's good to see you here. Haven't seen you in a while. Very exciting news, says Josh. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So other than that, I wanted to test my stuff and just put this out there as to the reason. I know a lot of people have probably heard that Alberta was lifting any restrictions on everything, but the why was the curious part, because good old commie Canada has been one of the front run leaders in locking people down. And like, you can't have kids, you know, playing a hockey game on a lake without the police showing up and trying to muscle people, right? That's how Canada has gotten. Where you come into Canada, you got to be quarantined for weeks before you can go do anything. You know, lock you in your house and all this stuff. And then just out of the blue, someone's like, nah, we're done with that. And we found the reason. And it's very, very exciting. EF Wave says he's not Canadian, but following it all over. Yeah. You know, the thing is like the propaganda out there is that all of these places are having all of these problems and all of these cases all over. But you look at who it is, and it's really just the Western countries where the news is, you know, pretty well 100% CIA controlled between America, England, you know, Israel, Germany, you know, these European countries. The news all kind of comes from one place. But if you look outside of that, you know, India's an odd one because they're trying all of this stuff and the people aren't going for it. But like in places like in Africa and those countries, they're just moving along like normal. Mexico, people are moving along like normal. China, everyone's moving along like normal. The Asian countries, obviously they're the ones that are in like Philippines and Singapore, and the ones that are kind of in bed with the Australians. They're doing the Australian thing, I think. So they're kind of following that, you know, the old World War II Germany plan of locking people down and all of that. And it's amazing that, you know, people don't see any. On that note, people wanted to be mad at me about having the star that says not jabbed or something, and people said, "Well, the plight of the Jews," and how could I make the comparison? It's like you don't see the parallel. You don't see the parallel of the yellow star on people that didn't get jabbed. You don't. It's like, okay, when they show up and tell you to get on a train, I guess you're going. I don't know. But after, you know, a year now of really bad, you know, stuff going on. And then of course they let up, and then they're going to bring in round 2. And, you know, people like me are not surprised. We're just waiting for it because this is all written down in documents that are 10 years old, right? This is Operation Lockstep. It says right in there, they're going to clamp down and people are going to complain and there'll be riots and then they'll ease up and then they'll clamp down again and then they'll really push it hard, you know? This is in Operation Lockstep. You can look it up. It's a Rockefeller plan. For people who think that the government actually makes things, you know, that think the governments rule anything and Biden's in charge of anything, it's like, well, how come the Rockefellers have a plan that it just so happens to coincide perfectly? It's like, yeah, but yeah, the Joe Biden's the leader of the free world. No, guys, that's not the way that it works. All you can do though is with this, you know, is kind of like a wait and see, but make your little fights where you can. And we're finding out that a lot of people that are even close to us that are kind of on the up and up are still going out to go get their gene therapy. And it's like, why did you go do that? I'm like, oh, I don't know. I didn't want to wear the mask anymore. And it's like, really? You're going to poison yourself and you're going to risk, you know, paralysis or death or ongoing complications so you don't have to wear a mask. It's like you could just not wear a mask and you could have the fight with whatever company or whatever thing is trying to make you do that. You could have the fight there instead of poisoning yourself. But, you know, to each their own. Each their own. It only took 1.5 years for someone to ask him to prove it, right? Shouldn't that be the first question before we get into mandates and lockdowns and all this stuff? It'd be like, can you prove this is real? No. EF Ways says, do you think it will go fast to the other provinces? Or will this be contested? Well, that's up to the people, unfortunately. And I'm a pretty positive guy, you know, but that only really applies to my own little surroundings and my own little bubble and my own little life. But as soon as I like step out of that, my hope for people in the future is just gets diminished and diminished because, like I said, people who are anti-government and anti-rules and regulations are still kind of going along with this stuff, which is, to me, is just like, what? It's like going against their personality. It's like complete mind control to the extent of like having a conversation with my dad who's in his mid 80s right now. So he's a silent generation guy with very boomer programming, right? But if you ask him a pointed question like about the economy when he was growing up and about these things that are kind of covered up in history, and you ask him about what was going on in World War II, and because he was a kid in that time, right? He'll give you the exact truth of exactly how you figure it was. You do a little research and you ask him, and he's like, oh yeah, this, and this, and you know, the state was messing with people here, and he's very on top of it and very much like me. But then when you ask him something, regarding the old PSYOP or something like that, he steps right back into mind control mode, or, you know, any sort of overarching political thing like you would see on CNN or Fox News or something like that. The programming kicks in, and it's weird because you can ask somebody a pointed question about something specific and the programming doesn't apply, and they'll tell you exactly what they think about you. And it's a perfectly logical, perfectly, you know, well thought out idea about how they think about a specific thing. But if that specific thing is part of a bigger context and you roll it into the big thing that's like the big PSYOP, then the programming takes over. And then no longer your individual thoughts just didn't apply. Now it's just the programming as like completely a great example is like when you talk about like liberalism and those things, which would be like for my dad. You know, he's a big state guy and a big liberal and all of this. But if you ask him any pointed questions about anything, the guy's a diehard conservative. If not, you know, he wouldn't be considered like an anarchist. He's a very by the rules guy, but very, very, very conservative, but always goes liberal and always takes the liberal approach. But it's the programming because the guy listens to NPR all day, right? A lot of older boomer people listen to NPR, and that's a very state-run communist organization where everybody talks like this, and we're going to talk about what's going on, and apparently the police are kicking in doors because there are people who wouldn't wear their masks, and those anti-masking protesters, they really need to be dealt with and maybe put on a train. And yeah, that mind control crap, right? You ask him about, what people thought of the guy out there in World War II Germany. Everybody loved the guy, right? You don't hear that. You want to hear about, the camps and all those things and the things that the atrocities of war. You look at what America did and you find out that most of the people that died in those camps were run by Americans. Uh-oh. But you know who knows that? The people who grew up in that time. Just like the people who are going to know it in the future about what's going on right now. And you got to be vocal about this stuff and let people know. Especially, the kids don't know any better. They just know, I got to wear this mask thing. I got to wear a muzzle. That's the importance of getting away from mainstream media and understanding all that stuff is just propaganda. And you get hypnotized and controlled and you don't even know it. And, you end up saying things and doing thoughts that really aren't your own. And it's a sad, sad thing. Brett says, feels like that movie 1984. No, I wouldn't be surprised if that 1984, if it's playing on Netflix, would be taken down. Playing on Hulu would be taken down and being removed from Amazon playlist. Because they actually did that on one of the streaming services, had a dystopian future type 1984 modern day thing. And it was extremely popular. And they only did 1 or 2 seasons of it. And then they stopped because it wasn't any longer. It wasn't a fantasy. It was like real events that were actually taking place. So they actually stopped producing it. I don't remember the name of that show off the top of my head, but that's a real thing. Bacon Toast, how you doing? Antifa's going after evangelicals in the park. No, I don't know anything about that. A lot of that stuff, if it's on mainstream news, is just fake. That's my opinion of it. I haven't seen it, so I don't really know much of anything about it. But if it's something that's on CNN or something that's on Fox, and it's like, I got a bunch of crisis actors to get together and make a little play show, Apparently with this, what's going on in Alberta is the big thing that's actually on the news. You're not going to hear about this King guy, right? You're not going to hear about this guy on the news. You'll hear about the protesters that are protesting Alberta government saying, no, we want lockdowns and we want the jab and we want the mask and we want all this stuff and you're terrible people for not forcing us to stay in our homes and all this stuff. That's what the news is, okay? And the reality of the situation is they film it in such a way, it's all crisis actor people. And the left, that's all they do because nobody actually supports them. You look at when Biden was running for president, how this guy got voted in, he'd go speak at these speaking engagements and there'd be a dozen people there, literally a dozen people. And you're telling me that people voted for this guy, all right? Just like with this, you're telling me people went and they demand to be locked in their houses. You're telling me that, right? And you look at the thing and it's like, I know how this works because when I worked at the university, our office for IT was actually in the governor's office, okay? So what happens is anytime someone decides that there's going to be, they want to pass some kind of a bill or some kind of legislation, is the liberals, they put the call out and give everyone a free carton of cigarettes to get on the bus and get shipped in. And it's a flash mob where they bring 4 busloads of people in and you got a couple of people on bullhorns and you make sure the news media is there. And after an hour, they all get on the buses and they go home. Okay. And then all you see on the news is about how thousands of protesters, rallied around the governor's office. It's a lie. And they're doing the same thing right now with this Alberta and the protesters. Who is seriously going to go out there and go protest and say, I want to be locked in my house. I want to be locked in my house. There are some boomer people out there who are retired who don't care about their generation coming after them and are like, I want to stay in my house. Just give me my Social Security and my pension. And, I don't know. There could be, but I don't see anybody who actually wants to be locked in their homes and having to wear masks and all this stuff for an admitted thing that doesn't exist. It's admitted. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, after all of this, this is probably going to get deleted off of YouTube. I mean, YouTube has been deleting stuff. They're not giving me checks, but I'm not trying to say anything that, of course, that's going to auto flag and boot me off. But you know, whatever. If it happens, it happens. It's important to bring stories like this out about, you know, just a guy who got a ticket, you know, basically defeated the government of Canada. Just by just asking a simple question, prove that it exists. Okay? That's how simple it is. So it's worthwhile to talk about. Hey, Nick, how you doing? EF Wave saying that there's no lockdowns or curfews. It depends on where you live. Like, I found out when this whole thing started that I'm basically in what's a test zone. And this is 100% theory with backing in real life stuff. It's kind of like, you know, you see the patterns and you draw the lines and you come to conclusions. And there's a lot of things in my town that make absolutely no sense unless they were getting support from, you know, the state government or the feds or whatever. I mean, it all kind of goes from the feds. They could say that all little small towns in America, they all get like state funding from whatever state that they're a part of. And that can be to fluoridate the water, right? You know, supposedly fix roads, do green initiative plans to build more parks, right? Because when you live 50, 60 miles outside of Minneapolis and all you see is nothing but cornfields and grasslands and trees and forests everywhere, obviously what you need is $10 million to build another park in your small town. No, the $10 million is there to put a swing set in there, and the $0.9 million is for the people who run the town to make it more commie. That's how all this stuff happens. And the reason that this has been able to happen is because the money isn't based on anything. The money is free. It costs nothing. They print it out of thin air and just pass it around and say, well, if you do this, we'll give you some money. Will you do that? We'll give you some money. And because the United States is the ones who print the money for the rest of the world, it's worked out pretty well, but that is coming to an end. All right. People are realizing they're kind of getting the shaft and they don't want to play that game anymore. They don't want to be slaves to America anymore. People are figuring out, which is why I'm a proponent of cryptocurrencies and things. But the reason that things happen generally will go back to money. And it doesn't matter if it's a social problem, doesn't matter if it's an environmental problem. It doesn't, you know, really matter. It always comes back to money and enslaving people pretty much. Right. So I found out that my little town, and here's what got me, was for some reason, when all of these riots are going on in Minneapolis and, you know, around Target, and you had Antifa there and Black Lives Matter and all these people that are burning down the town, they ended up in my town for a rally or a protest. And it's like the person who was organizing it was from Minneapolis. And I'm like, what would be the possible benefit or possible gain to doing something like that and staging it in this town? And of course, the residents didn't like it and they showed up like armed and stuff, right? But my town is only 5,000 people, and it's a dead town, as in like a business cannot stay open here for longer than a year. Grand opening, grand closing. What would be the point of having something here? And when you look at it through this whole crisis thing, you figure out that, oh, we're like a testing bed, because, you know, Minneapolis, St. Paul is kind of mostly globalist, I think. There's that impression about it, but it's like a test bed. If you want to know how a demographic thinks out in the suburbs, a demographic of like mostly all white people and like, you know, probably 30% Mexicans out here. If you want to find out how these rural people think and how enslaved they are and whether or not they're going to fight back, you put their little psyop out there and then you kind of see how it goes and you kind of gauge you test the waters. How is lockdowns going to go out in here? How is you know, riots and protests going to go out here? And they get their little feeler gauges out, right? So apparently, because they threw a dart at the board, they made my county the absolute hottest hotbed for pandemic stuff in the country. So we're like back to mad. We don't have anything like a lockdown, but all of the businesses who are super global, super globalist, super Freemasonic, they're in the club. Oh yeah, just like Menards, right? Everybody's you gotta put on the mask, right? And of course pushing the jab and all of that. And because of that, the hospital that's here, and hospitals are all better, basically state institutions anyway. But this particular one, being in this particular town, they're really going hardcore. You had the mask, you got the goggles, you got the face shield, you do it all, and get the jab, right? And it's pretty laughable. And the people out here is like, I don't have much hope for them. To me, the only way you get through it is just kind of laughing at it, right? The people that I work with, they know that it's nonsense, but all they want to do is just complain about it. And it's like, well, until you do something, nothing's going to change. They're just going to roll in even harsher and harsher stuff until people start fighting back. And that's unfortunately how it is. But yeah, needless to say, I'm looking for another place to go. I don't really want to hang out in a test bed. It's not very fun being in a test bed. Brett says they don't have to print money. It's all digital. Yeah, they haven't printed money in a long time. Yeah, Joe Biden says, I need $20 trillion. And then the Federal Reserve, they write 20 trillion on a napkin and then they slide it over to Joe. And he goes, hee hee. And then he takes it back and they apparently create bonds out of it to put, make debt slaves out of everybody. They apparently take the napkin and make bonds out of it, and then the Federal Reserve buys those bonds. It's all a farce. The whole thing is a farce as far as the economic system. I mean, you look at buying a house, I'll just explain it quickly, is that there's all these fraud laws, that come in where like, woo, if you move more than a whopping $10,000, they need your ID, your retinal scan, an anal probe and all that. Because they want to know what you're doing with $10,000, and it's apparently for money laundering. Like, money laundering? What are we in, like 1920? Money laundering. Money isn't worth anything. Money isn't worth anything. I mean, money laundering. That's ridiculous. Digitally, you can track where all the money is going. That whole idea is dumb. But you take your money and you want to go buy a house, and let's say you saved up 20 grand to buy a $200,000 house and make your down payment. Well, you show up to the bank to go take out your loan, and the bank doesn't have the money for your $200,000 house, but you have still $1,000 left in your savings account. So they take your $1,000 and then they say based on that they can loan you $200,000 because they just invent the money. You have $1,000 in your account, they can loan out like 100 times as much as you have, right? If not more. I'm just going to go with 100 because I know it's at least that. It's been that way since 1971. But like, you got $1,000 in your account, they can just poof. Here's $100,000. Go buy a house. And then they take the $30,000 that you give them for a down payment and go loan out $3 million on that. Poof, out of thin air. There is no reality to money. And because of that, you end up with a society not only with perpetual interest rates and the cost of living going up, which is by design, right? It's your inflation rate at 1% to 2% is acceptable. According to the government, they can steal that much from you. But it's by design because they know it's going to happen. But what you will also get is this overwhelming state machine that can do whatever it wants because the money supply is unlimited. Absolutely purely unlimited ever since 1971. And nobody apparently cares now because with their stimmy checks, they can go buy all the Xboxes they want, and whatever else. And that's how the system is run. But when you have these little kinks in the system where the people actually start figuring out they're under a psyop, it can make a heck of a dent when you start placing liability on government organizations. They want you to do something and there's no law for it. There's nothing that's been voted on. You make them take liability. If you work at a company and they want you to do something, you would make them take liability. And that is how you beat stuff, right? There's a long old rant there on economics. But yeah, I don't know. That's about what I got. I just kind of wanted to test out my thing, make sure it's working, and kind of put something up on the old Max Bauer channel. Otherwise, I'm kind of doing a crypto thing now, and because it's a brand new channel, I need to get a bunch of stuff out there so that there's actually something to watch. So yeah, and I need to use this piece of software, and it looks like it's working okay. Yeah. So anyways, Brett, good to see you. Nick, good to see you. I haven't had much on the old flat Earth thing to do, but I kind of want to make a video using my lathe so I can write that off on taxes. Maybe I'll do a flat Earth video on lathe for Just Plain Science. Maybe I'll spin myself a globe and do a little science experiment, maybe. Nick says people don't know their rights. Yeah, I don't know if they... I'm coming to find out that either schools were completely different, which I'm sure they were, right? When I graduated, I went to high school in like the 90s. But it was amazing that back then, what high school you went to, people actually knew and understood if you went to a good one or a bad one. Like people would always say, "Oh, Stillwater is a great school. You learn a lot there," or whatever. And I'm like, whatever. To me, it's just another building. It's all one curriculum, right? Well, I'm coming to find out that actually I was taught a great many of things in my high school that most people never had heard of. You know, I was taught about geocentricity. I was taught, I wasn't taught flat Earth, but essentially the Jewish model, globe-based, right? With everything rotating around the globe. Also taught creationism along with evolution. Is taught a lot of these different things. Also taught about economics and the fiat system that we live in, where our money isn't even as good as monopoly money. Because in monopoly, you have rules. The fiat system, there is no rules. There isn't. It's a double entry booking system, and people who are accountants out there know what that is. Where as long as, if you take out money over here, as long as you have something in this other block, so that at the end of the day, your balance is equal zero in a double entry booking system, you take your napkin with $2 trillion and you put it in one entry, and then you take something that's like another piece of paper that says bonds worth $2 trillion, and you put it in the other entry in the booking system. At the bottom, it says zero, so everything is good with the books. And that is the system. You know, like I said, monopoly, they got rules. They don't have any rules. And this applies really to the fascist system in the federal government. Obviously, like cities and states, they have budgets and they kind of pretend that money isn't unlimited. And maybe for them it isn't. But when you're the federal government and you effectively own all of these businesses like Google and Facebook, and you probably and you run, the CIA runs the whole drug thing, you know, they probably don't need to worry about money, and they can just get more from the Federal Reserve whenever they want. Not for us, but you know, there is a solution and a way out of that, and it'll take some time. But you know, I'll just point out the fact that Bitcoin, I made videos when Bitcoin was around 40,000 and it went down to around 35, where I said, you know, it's a pretty good time because it's not going to go down much more, and it did bottom out at 30,000 because it's under immense pressure from BlackRock, from Grayscale, from Goldman Sachs, from all the banks, from PayPal, from Tesla, all of these entities that are shorting the market to try and keep it down as much as possible, meaning they are actually buying it at a higher price and selling it lower. They're buying it off the exchanges so they can sell it to keep the price down. And so that's that they can accumulate more and more and more and more and more, because they don't want you to have any. They don't want you to be financially secure. They don't want you to be free and say, well, I don't like this state. I don't want to wear any mask. I don't want to do this. I'm going to Mexico. And you don't need to go to the bank or nothing, because your money is on the internet. You can go anywhere and retrieve it and nobody can confiscate it, right? So what happened now is either they ran out of money to manipulate the market and keep it low. And I'm thankful they kept it low, because I don't, it sucks if you're invested and the market goes down 50% and you need that money, but you don't invest what you can't afford to lose. And it's a waiting game. And I was able to accumulate a lot more at the low, because it's never going to go down to 29,000 again. So I was able to accumulate more. And when they ran out of money to manipulate the market is going back up. And they kind of conceded, I guess. Goldman Sachs came out and said, we're now offering Bitcoin. We're now offering Bitcoin to everybody. And these other investment firms are all out there only for their wealthy people. Now, and for people who don't know, every major institution has been poo-pooing cryptocurrencies for the last 6 months really, really hard. And like Elon Musk and all these guys, to keep the market as low as possible so they can keep a buying. But now they're coming out saying, hey, it's the greatest thing in the world. Come buy from us. Only if you're rich, though. Only if you're rich. You got to have more than $20 million. Otherwise, we're not going to sell to the plebs. Right. But it's a good thing you don't need banks, right? You don't need banks. You can go out and go get some for yourself. You don't need Grayscale. You don't need Morgan Chase. You don't need any of them guys. You don't need Bank of America. You don't need PayPal. Just on that note, though, for people wondering like what the use is for crypto right now, it's basically the inflation's kicking in, and it's a store of wealth, and it's a hedge against inflation, to where if the money inflates by 20%, your Bitcoin's going to go up by 20%. Crypto stocks right now are really sky high because the inflation rate, everyone's moving into stocks, and we'll see if that crashes or not. But whatever happens, your buying power is pretty much going to stay the same in crypto. Well, Bitcoin. I'm not going to say crypto, Bitcoin. But you do have to deal with market volatility, they call it, because it goes up and down by 5 to 10% every day, depending on what's going on. But it's worth a lot more than your Federal Reserve notes. And good old El Salvador is probably going to be one of the richest countries in the world in 10 years. And that's how that is. Yeah, Nick, 20 million if you want to go for the old Goldman Sachs investment fund, where they let you buy Bitcoin that they had already previously bought at 28,000. They let you buy it from them at 35 or 40,000, and then they give you 10% of your investment at the end of the year when Bitcoin goes up by 200%. That's how that works. It's probably not that bad, but they're only going to, that's a custody thing, and all banks are going to offer it. They have to, because banks are irrelevant. And pretty soon, Amazon's going to have their coin out, and you'll be able to buy your Amazon goods with cryptocurrency if you choose to. PayPal is going to be using it, and everyone else is. And it's like, right now there's a bill that they're trying to put the kibosh on. It's called the infrastructure bill, where they want a couple of $1 trillion to give to their buddies. And then, I guarantee you not one pothole is going to get filled with any of that money. But as part of a tacked on thing on that, they want know your customer information anytime anyone transfers any cryptocurrency. And it's like, oh, good luck with that. Good luck with that. And people who probably don't know how crypto works and the exchange market works, there's people that will make 100 trades in a day. I mean, that's day trading. That's what you do. The idea that the exchange or the miners or someone is going to send somebody's tax information every time that happens is ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. And it's the idea that a lot of people, concern actually among young people. The guy that I work with who invests in straight up stocks like Tesla and things like that said he's not into crypto because, the government's going to ban it or something like that. And it's like, you guys are thinking too small. America doesn't matter anymore. Okay. America's its hegemony and its imperialism and all of that is going to be down the tubes in 10 years. All right. America doesn't matter. They can do all their little bannings and all their little stuff they want to, but it is not going to affect Bitcoin in the slightest. All right. Bitcoin is going to outlast the government. Just look at what China pulled out all of their miners and banned Bitcoin. It did all this stuff in China and Bitcoin didn't care. All right. It's a global. It's a worldwide currency that is fungible, that cannot be counterfeited. It is rock solid, hard, verified. It ain't going anywhere. And it doesn't matter what America does. And the proof is in the pudding. The largest country, the most adoption, the most accepted place for Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is Nigeria. Nigeria, I'm pretty sure that Bitcoin is banned because it competes too hard with their crappy fiat currency they have in Nigeria. So all the Nigerians use Bitcoin. It doesn't matter what the state does. It doesn't matter what kind of rules they set up because it's on the internet, it's decentralized, and nobody can take it from you. Okay? If you self-custody, that's another thing. But you have your Bitcoin, you can take it off the exchange and put it in your private custody wallet or a software. It's on the internet. Right? So once you take your keys, take possession of your keys, that's it. Nobody can get your stuff. And that's the first time that's ever happened, ever in the history of man, where you have an unconfiscatable wealth preservation device. All right. And yeah, that's what there is to that. That's what there is to that. I'm getting into the crypto thing. Oh, we want to stay on topic. Ways the crypto stuff is manipulated. Well, yeah, so is your Federal Reserve notes, and so is the stock market, and so is everything else. Obviously, the whole thing is kind of a game. People are involved in it. The thing is where a person who owns, in Bitcoin's case, a person who owns 100,000 Bitcoin has really no more power than somebody who owns 1 Bitcoin or less than a Bitcoin. You don't just get to own the system because you have more of it. It allows you to play around on the market a little bit and manipulate the market price. But that happens all over. And when you're talking in comparison to a fiat system where the money is based on nothing, we're at 0% interest and they just keep on printing. Where is your comparison there? There is no comparison. To say the market is manipulated is like compared to fiat. Have you noticed that the price of gold hasn't gone up in 25 years? Do you think that that's normal? Do you think that's normal? It's obviously completely controlled and manipulated, right? Because it's involved in the fiat currency. You want to control and manipulate something like Bitcoin. Bitcoin is still a Bitcoin. In relation to Federal Reserve notes, who really cares? What is the purchasing power of your actual Bitcoin? You know, you're comparing like Federal Reserve notes to pesos, to Argentinian dollars, to whatever. Who cares? It's all fantasy money. That's all there is to it. Yeah, just plain crypto. I'll go into that a little bit. Starting a channel to really just talk about crypto and financial freedom, and it's ideally at some point it's going to be talking about the freedom aspect of it. Obviously, there is a ton of money, Federal Reserve dollars, to be made in cryptocurrency. If you want to be a millionaire in 5 years, you're going to go crypto, right? But you have to understand that there's a lot of volatility in the market, and you need to be able to stomach that. And it's kind of the thing where I'd recommend everybody own some Bitcoin and take money that, if it's just been sitting in your bank account for years and you've done nothing with it, take a small amount, a couple $100, buy some Bitcoin and just hold on to it. And a few months later, buy some more. A few months later, buy some more. A little bit at a time with money that you're not going to miss. Just so you have a toehold and a foothold and can familiarize yourself with the markets, because at the end of the day, we don't know what's going to happen with the Federal Reserve System. We know they want to crash it. Okay, it's done deal. It's the Great Reset. We know they want to crash it. We know that they want to get cash out of people's hands because you're allowed to actually do business with people and not be taxed on it. Whoa, we can't have that. We can't have people doing transactions and buying things at a garage sale without the government knowing about it. Can't have that. So they are moving to a central bank digital currency of some sort. Okay, it is going to happen. It is going to happen. And at that point, everyone will be on crypto. So It's good to protect wealth and hedge stuff and be involved in a currency that cannot be manipulated. And the only one right now that I'm aware of is Bitcoin. And I know there's a lot of people out there to be like, well, XYZ coin and this other great technology. It's like, no. Bitcoin has the backing of all the major players, of all the people who have all the money, right? Do you think they're going to let anything happen to Bitcoin when they own like 100,000 Bitcoins? You know, no. PayPal and Goldman Sachs and Morgan Chase and all these entities are betting big on Bitcoin because they know it's the future. They know nobody needs these guys. Nobody needs them. You don't need your local bank. When was the last time people went to a bank? I don't know. You got some random loose change. You went to go cash in. Most people use credit cards. Most people use debit cards. You buy something on Amazon. Do you mail them cash? Do you mail them a check? No. That's the way the world is. But in order to preserve like a little bit of anonymity and be able to hold on to your wealth without getting taxed out of existence, right? Something like a Bitcoin is where you need to be. And that's where the focus of my channel is, but I'm also going to be doing things like showing people how to get on an exchange. I'm going to be doing a deal where I'm going to dollar cost average $1,000, right? And invest in what I would invest in as far as like sound at investing stuff as an opinion, right? These are projects I've looked at and why I chose them. And then I'm going to take 1,000 and put it into what I dub as shitcoins or altcoins, Dogecoin, Shiba Inu, all of these projects that a lot of people get into when they're like, oh, I'm going to be a millionaire. I put $20 on Shiba Inu and we're going to be a millionaire overnight, right? And we're going to see where that is going to go after a period of time. I don't know. And just kind of show you the reality, because people don't understand. When you say, yeah, Bitcoin is up 50% in 3 weeks, people don't understand what that even means, you know, until they actually look at numbers like as if I invested this much. If you invested $10,000 in Bitcoin when I said, hey guys, you should look at getting into Bitcoin, okay, you'd have $15,000 today. Right? Now, obviously, I don't know when I did that video, like 3 months ago or something like that. 4 months ago, the market continued to go down. And I said, look, it could keep going down. But in this $30,000 to $35,000 range, you're still good. I mean, let it sit there. She'll go up. So that's the reality of the situation. And the market is now with Bitcoin, the new bottom for the market, I believe personally, is $41,000 is the new bottom. So the odds of you getting something less than $41,000 now are pretty slim. It could happen. This is the year of the black swans, right? There's all sorts of things that they're trying to do with all their little plans that can throw a monkey wrench into the system a little bit. But over the long term, that is the only real safe investment, right? You can't, I mean, stocks are so inflated right now that a lot of people are looking for a stock market crash. And when that happens, people's pension funds are going to crash. The housing market is kind of on a edge of a bubble, okay? People are trying to find hard assets to put their money in right now because their fiat, what's in your wallet right now or what's in your bank account, is factually losing 15% purchasing power every single year, okay? So this includes businesses, you know, they're trying to find places to put their money to. And when you have your option of Bitcoin, which over the long span of its entire history of 12 years, you average it out, it gains 200% every single year. If you averaged it out, obviously there are some years it goes 600% and some years that it goes down by 50%, right? But over the long term, like this year, it went up 650% this year. Went from, from a year from today, it was below $10,000 today, last year, and it went up to $65,000. Okay, so that's 650% up. And then from 65,000, it went down to 30,000, right? But over the entire year, even though it dropped 50%, it's still up 300,000, or still up, 300%. So it's like I said, it's volatility. It's maybe not a market for everybody. You put it out there, but it's one of those deals where you're going to be involved in crypto, whether you like it or not. It's whether you like it or not. And right now, there's less than like 2% of the population of the earth that is involved in crypto in a significant way and understands it and deals in it. So we're still early. So even if Bitcoin is $50,000, $60,000, $100,000, it's still worth being in. Because the way that it's structured, price is going to keep going up compared to fiat. Maybe not necessarily to gold so much because it's a harder asset, but compared to fiat, definitely. It has to. And of course, my opinion, not investment advice, blah, 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 blah. I actually have that up. Do I have that? Yes, right there. I'm not a financial advisor. Although you'd be doing pretty good if you chose to get involved in it a few months ago and pick up some stuff. You'd be doing pretty good. I'm up 56% in 3 weeks. So, yeah. EF Wave says, why buy a house? It's never yours. Well, everybody needs a place to live. And what a house allows you to do is actually, preserve your wealth in a sense, because real estate typically does go up. It at least is fair market value. There is some price discovery in real estate, a little bit. And if you're living there for 10 years, usually you're going to make your money back, right? As opposed to renting, where you're just kind of spending money into a black hole. And obviously, there are places that have their pluses and their minuses and their advantages and disadvantages. But owning a house is just, you got to live somewhere, right? That's how I look at it. You got to live somewhere. And owning a home and having more of a say in the community and being a taxpayer, right, has something to say for it. And, when it comes to property taxes, all right, the idea that the government could just swoop in and take your stuff, that's pretty... Well, what are you going to do about it? And at least with property taxes, they have to give you a statement as to where your property taxes are going. And remember, property taxes, by and large, is all going to the local government, right? So if you live in a small town, that stuff literally kind of goes to your school and kind of goes to public works. So the scam part of it, which is where I live, is they evaluate your house like 50% more than what its actual market rate is so that they get more tax money. That's their scam. And that's everybody's scam at the moment, right? They're going to say your house is worth twice as much as it is to raise your taxes. And then what happens is the economy goes bust and everyone's house is worth $10,000 as opposed to $400,000. And then those tax, the amount you pay on your taxes mysteriously doesn't go down, right? That's just a scam. It's just to be wise to it, though. Try not to let people get away with stuff. Isaiah, they could pull the switch tomorrow and none of this will matter. No, they can't. Everything that that happens with the lockdowns and the masks and getting your gene manipulation therapy and all this stuff, all this things that happen, and the people that put up with doing these things for their job and things, that only happens because people allow it. Okay? They may have all the money in the world, but they don't have much power beyond that. It's just the people that are very weak-minded that will do anything for money. Right? It's the world. People who don't have a sense of morality, they've been programmed that they're just monkeys running around making up their own morality as I'm the god of my own world, right? That's who you're dealing with. And people will overlook a lot of moral things that they would consider to have a moral problem with, as long as someone tells them to do it. Because if they feel like they're being told to do it, then they don't have a moral repercussion for that because I was told to do it. Following orders. That guy told me he is the one who made me do it. I'm just doing it because I got a family to feed, right? How many times you heard that? The reality of the situation is the person who is actually doing it is the one who suffers the ramifications, not the person who told you to do it. And that's how things work. Isaiah, the The old depopulation thing, their goal for that, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I'm not gonna be on that list unless it's by other means, you know. You find me of a mysterious Max Bauer mysterious heart attack, right? That would be it. I'm certainly not gonna be by my own doing. Risk J, bigger bubble burst than 2008. On that front, on the economic front, and the people that I'm watching, and I don't know that I necessarily agree. For instance, Max Kaiser, who's been in Bitcoin promoting it for 12 years, says that Bitcoin this year is going to 220,000, and that's his prediction. I don't agree with him. Okay, I'm half that, right? I would 80 to 100, you know, somewhere in there. I don't agree with him. Other people that I listen to that are saying that are in the housing market and they're familiar with real estate and buying and selling and renting properties and things say that this burst in the housing market will be way bigger than what happened in 2008 because nothing was resolved in 2008, and this is according to them. I'm not a real estate guy. I don't know. I think that the wake-up call to the smarter people out there who are in investing and in real estate and stuff like that are generally a bit more on the ball with things. So I don't know. I know the goal is to, you know, get rid of the Federal Reserve dollar and roll it into something else. And I guess stuff is going to have to crash, right? And that's all I know about that. Yeah, Isaiah, you're probably right about that, but I think I'm too small of a fish. I'm too small of a fish. They've got me pretty well regulated to where they don't even bother to flag my channel for anything. So, yeah. Klaus Schwab said they got something that'll happen in comparison, that nothing will compare to it. A 1 meter of the 100 meter that they have planned. Well, here's the thing that people need to understand, and I bring this up as often as I can, is they can only do what you allow them to do. Okay? They have plans to do all this stuff. They want chips in people's brains, and they want, you know, you to be good little automatons like in the Matrix sitting in your little pod playing Xbox, right? That's what they want. But the thing is that people have to allow people to do it. I mean, people have crazy plans all the time. All sorts of people that probably have their notebook list of the things they're going to do and all this. People have plans. I mean, you know, how many people fulfill their New Year's resolutions? Okay. That's the same thing with their plans. These are all the things they hope to do. You know, the difference is that they have the money and a whole bunch of moralless people, right? Who will go around and they'll do anything for pieces of paper that have green printing on them. And that's where they have an advantage. But the real thing is that you actually have to volunteer for all of these things. And if you don't volunteer for them, then they're not going to happen. Just that simple, guys. All right, I think I varied on from everywhere, from kudos to Canada, all the way through cryptocurrency and the importance of it, all the way through the other channel. EF waves, but until there's a critical mass, their plans will go on. The thing is with their plans is, if you're a guy like me who knows what their plans are all the way, like knows about all the things that they're planning to do, they're not getting away with a lot. Okay. The surprise one was I figured that they would get away with their current scam the first few months. And then people would start to wisen up. I didn't expect it to take a year, all right? But the reality of the situation is they're not getting as much as they want. And I think that things like Bitcoin kind of threw a huge monkey wrench into their plans for a lot of things. And the goal is, of course, to keep everybody financially dependent 100% on the state. So where basically you go to work and you get enough money to maybe buy Netflix and buy Disney Plus. And other than that, you're just paying for food, and the rest of it goes to taxes. That's the idea. And every so often, the government, if you're a good boy and you have a good social credit score, the government will keep sending you out little stimuluses where you can go get some cotton candy, or you can go buy a Snickers bar, right? Your little government stimulus if you're a good boy. And that's the plan that China is running, and that's where they want everything to go. And they're not even close. And the odds of that happening in America are essentially zero. America is going to crumble way before they have any time to do any of that. Especially you can see it in this infrastructure bill. As I said, there isn't one pothole that's going to be filled with their infrastructure bill. What you are going to see is huge surveillance networks. High-speed internet is in there. We want Generation 5 Wi-Fi, whatever, want all this stuff up everywhere. And that's what the infrastructure bill is for, is the infrastructure to set up your surveillance society, your surveillance system, your cashless society with your cameras in every 5 feet with facial recognition and all that. That's what the infrastructure bill largely is. So, they're obviously behind the times. Because how long, even though now they have it funded, how long is putting all of that stuff and getting it implemented and actually putting it out on the streets going to take? 20 years? Do we think the economy in America has got 20 years? No. They're a little behind. And you got things out there like Dogecoin, which is a meme cryptocurrency. It's kind of like a gambling, a lot of these cryptos you're gambling on, because there's some of these worthless coins will go up by 1,000% in a week, right? So if you put $100 in there, now you got $10,000, right? And that's what gets a lot of people into these markets. Dogecoin is one of those things, and Elon Musk is pumping that. And you've got a lot of 18, 19, 20-year-olds that took their stimulus check and put it into Dogecoin, and they became millionaires overnight, right? You have things like that happening in the cryptocurrency world, to where when people's eyes are open to things like that being possible in it, that's it. You don't need it. We call it in the cryptocurrency market, and the people who deal in crypto and the Max Kaisers of the world, we call it FU money, right? Where you don't have to pay attention to what's going on in the world and Federal Reserve dollars and all of this crony capitalist fake economic system. You don't care, because you got your stuff. Nothing can be taken away from you. And that's why you say things like Bitcoin are better than gold, because gold has been taken away from people. Silver can be taken away from people, especially if you don't custody it. Because if you own like $10,000 of gold, do you actually have that buried under your house? No. You have it at some vault somewhere, or you have it in a safe deposit box or something like that. It can be taken from you. You can't rip my seed phrase out of my brain for my digital assets and my digital worth, and no one will ever get any of that. And when I decide to pass it on, should I decide to pass it on to someone else, it will be stored in their brain. It won't be stored in some bank, in some safety deposit box. It won't be stored anywhere like there that anyone can get it. And the funny thing about, they say you can't take it with you. With Bitcoin, you do take it with you if you choose to. If you die and you've got a whole bunch of Bitcoin, you just made everybody else with Bitcoin that much richer, because there's only going to be so much Bitcoin, 21 million coins. People die. People lose their keys. People forget that they have it. So that Bitcoin is no longer used, no longer touched. It brings more value to the network. And that's how that works. As opposed to the fiat system, where everyone is just on a little hamster wheel. I got to make more so I can pay my taxes. So I can sandwich cost me $20. A Big Mac cost me $8. A Big Mac. You guys remember like the dollar menu in McDonald's? You remember like the Big Macs when I was a kid, when they came out with the whole number system? That's how old I am. I remember the beginnings of the number system for which value meal you wanted. The Big Mac value meal was $2.99. You got a Big Mac and a large fry, and then your large drink for $2.99. The Big Mac today is $8 by itself. $8. Remember now, it was only a couple of years after that I was working at Cub Foods and making more money than I currently do working at a grocery store. You still think you're happy with your Federal Reserve System? You still think you're happy with that? Hmm. Yeah. Anyways, guys, I think I don't have a timer on my OBS studio to see how long I've been going, but I'd imagine it's probably long enough. So anyways, oh wow, it does, an hour. Yeah, definitely long enough. So anyways, I'm going to be doing stuff regarding cryptocurrency on a Just Plain Crypto, where, yeah, if you're interested in that stuff, go over there. And of course, I do have Just Plain Science, where we're talking flat earth stuff and talking science in general, right? Of the lies, the things that people believe in that are absolutely demonstrably false. A good earmark that you should do, unless you went to a really good high school like me, and you're like in your mid 40s, the curriculum wasn't that bad back then. If you went to high school sometime in the last 20 years, you should probably just forget everything they told you. I can only imagine what kinds of crazy ideas that they're filling kids' heads with. And you're gonna get rid of that programming and learn to think for yourself. And then the world opens up, and then you can understand things. And you figure, like me, figure out that I'm probably a year ahead of the curve as far as what's going on in the world, maybe 2 years ahead of the curve. And a lot of people that are labeled as conspiracy theorists, right? Turns out that they're all like 10 years ahead of the curve. When you look at the way things happen. And that's what happens is conspiracy theorists say that this is happening and this is going on behind the scenes and this is what they're planning to do and blah, 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 blah. And then the stuff doesn't come to fruition for like 5 years. So all that time, though, people are saying the conspiracy guy's a nut because the things aren't happening. And it's like, guys, you don't understand. It takes decades for these plans to be put in place. Like I said, Operation Lockstep, and what we're going through right now was written in 2010. Okay? Agenda 21 was written around 2010 too. And then Agenda 35 or Agenda 2030. Yeah. All of these things, they're plans that they start implementing decades before they actually see them actually appear and show up. You just see, like, obviously things like the gene therapy thing is like a precursor to Mark of the Beast, right? You start seeing things like this show up. That doesn't mean that it is. And these things take time. And that's part of, the mind control game too, is the slower that you do something, the less people will notice, and they do it generationally. So like the generations now have never known the earth without internet, right? So they can say, no, the world has always been this way. They can teach these kids generationally through the internet that this is the way things are, and this is the way they've always been, and put the veil over people's eyes. And that'll happen unless people, tell their kids and tell the younger people know how things really are, right? I would have figured things out probably 10 years sooner if my dad would have told me how things really are. But he is also really locked into programming, really locked into follow the state. The state's daddy. Daddy will take care of me. Daddy will take care of me, right? That's the mentality. And they don't see it, don't understand it that way, but that's what it is. And his advice for growing up is get a job with the state. Heard that all the time. Get a job with the state. Like, let some other daddy take care of me. That was the idea. But along the way, I got a lot of other little nuggets about how his real personality is and what his real thoughts are about things. You just have to come at it at a little different angle. And you got to pass on the real truth to people so they don't get bamboozled by nonsense they teach you from some government employee. Nick says, have you been under a rock? What lawsuit? Google Patrick King wins in court. And that is the reason for the Alberta lifts on everything. So that's what we have. And yeah, guys, I've been going. It looks like everything worked pretty good. And I am going to be out of here. Take care. God bless.